Crowell here. Today we review a spiced ale and discuss a Christmas tale. Hey guys, good evening, good to see you.
What do you know?
Right.
Longinus is here.
Right, good to see you.
Good. Well, how about some beer and conversation?
It sounds like a great idea. Sure, so what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind is, say, Marley, Cratchit, Fezziwig, and Tim of the Tiny Variety.
I see. So it must be time for P&C's Shortcuts of the Classics.
Yes, it is, where we read the great works from the great authors, and just provided that they aren't too long.
Exactly, as long as they're not too long. So today it's A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And of course, since we're reading a book, we're bringing Longinus in here.
Yeah, that's how it works.
All right.
And it's a Christmas season, so we're having a Christmas-flavored beer.
Christmas beer. So this is good old Sam Adams Old Fezziwig, which fits in well with Christmas Carol. So it's a spiced ale. And what do you expect out of a spiced Christmas beer?
Yes, there's Christmas spices, maybe some nutmeg, some cinnamon,
something like that.
Some maltiness.
I usually expect it to be a little bit dark and to be a little malty. Yeah,
and that's what we have here. It's got that's a great color.
Yeah, delicious. And it's not not incredibly strong. It's only 5.9, so it's not like a really heavy duty.
Like a winter warmer, really.
Yeah, but it's
not so much.
But it's very, very pleasant, I think.
And the flavor isn't too heavy. It's not too syrupy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not too.
It's more beerish.
Some of those beers get a little bit too much. And,
but this is nice.
Yeah, very pleasant.
Well,
maybe Fezziwig himself would have enjoyed this.
Yes,
beer.
he would. Yes, he would. So, before we get into the book itself, got any background? Any?
Well, what do you got on this guy, Charles Dickens?
Well, Charles Dickens.
Who is this guy?
Just the most famous novelist in England. Maybe of all time. Definitely in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Well, he was born in 1812.
Oh, my goodness.
And he died 58 years later.
Oh, 58.
Yeah, he died in 1870, so he was 58 years old. Right. Yeah, that's a
hard thing to hear.
It's a hard thing, yep. But I'd like to say he grew up in the middle class, and he was also dirt poor.
But he apparently worked sometime in like a boot blacking factory or something.
Up until the age of 12, he was living pretty much a middle class life. He was a kid, and then he went to school and was doing great in school. And then his father gets thrown in debtor's prison.
Yikes!
The whole family does, but he doesn't because he's in boarding school.
Hold on, is that how debtor's prison works?
Yeah, the whole family goes. The whole family it's like a work house. So the whole family goes in there, and you work off your room and board and what you pay.
Yeah.
So he was.
And it's all fair. It's completely fair, of course.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So when that happened, he went to work.
Didn't color his view of Victorian age at all.
Well, Charles, he was staying with a family friend, so he didn't get that. But he got thrown into work. He was sticking labels onto bottles of boot blacking.
Okay.
So he was working in a factory. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week at the age of 12.
Wow.
Jeez. And he did that for less than a year because his grandmother died and left a little bit of money to get the family out of debtor's prison.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And then he was allowed to quit that job, and he went back to school until the age of 15.
Yeah.
And then when he turned the age of 15, he left school for good.
Well, that's enough learning.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're 15,
and back in the 1820s,
I saw some post recently about maybe we should get rid of these child labor laws because kids are growing up too soft nowadays. Maybe a little bit of hard work would do them some good.
Well,
I'm not going to push back too hard on that.
No, I mean, there's got to be some kind of a balance.
Yeah. So he went to work in a law office as a junior clerk.
Okay.
And it was there where he found writing and journalism.
Okay.
So is he go on our long list of the great writers that never finished college or even went?
Oh, he never went to college.
Yes.
No,
him. Include him.
I mean, our great writers. I mean, when we go through our list of our great writers, the fact is these guys are geniuses. And what were they going to learn in college? They were geniuses. They didn't. They don't need that.
Right. So he he discovered if he wanted to be a journalist, he had to learn shorthand. So he kind of like tricked everybody into teaching him shorthand.
Yeah.
And he learned that, and then he got a job with the newspaper called the Mirror of Parliament. And he was just covering Parliament, the government
Not a
affairs.
bad gig.
My mother knew shorthand. I remember watching her doing it. I was amazed at it. Like you take things like ing and you just make a symbol that means that, and just a way to write things very quickly. Anyway, go ahead.
So he was extremely adept at that, and he was capturing the debates of Parliament better than anybody else at the age of 15, 16, 17.
Okay.
So by the time he gets to be like 18, he's like, he's getting editorial responsibilities for this.
Right.
And then in late 1830s, he gets on the bandwagon of writing novels, but writing them for magazines and newspapers.
Yeah,
so
I always
it's a
thought that
serial
was
form.
interesting with Dickens, is he didn't like write a whole novel. He wrote it little bit by little bit, and he's paid by the word, so that's why we get these really long novels from him.
Except for Christmas Carol.
Yeah, except for Christmas Carol. Although apparently he wrote a Christmas Carol when he was hard on his luck and needed some money.
Hey, well, yeah, he was extremely depressed because he, in 1842, he published Christmas Carol in 1843. In 1842, he went to the United States, really to try to advocate for international copyright law, because people in the United States were plagiarizing his stuff. Were publishing his novels and not giving him any type of...
about the man who invented Christmas. Did you see that movie? Well, he does this U.S. tour, but I just thought he was just being celebrated. They didn't mention that he was actually promoting a.
Well, he was being celebrated. I mean, he came here. He was a huge.
Because this is so you already had Oliver Twist and Nicholas Nickleby in
Pickwick Papers
in 38 and 39.
Right.
But apparently his next three were kind of dud. Did these sound familiar? Barnaby Rudge, Master Humphrey's Clock, and Old Curiosity Shop.
I've heard of the third, but the other two
were all 1841, and so at this point he'd hit a kind of a dry spell leading up to a Christmas Carol.
Apparently when he wrote A Christmas Carol, he had no money. And basically he needed to write something to get back into things and get some money.
Yeah, well, he was extremely depressed too at that time because he was feeling like everybody was stealing from him. And they kind of were. Yeah. So he goes up to Manchester to give a reading, and he looks out, and everybody in Manchester is of the working class and are really, really appreciative of him. And he has sort of an epiphany of, gratitude.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the impetus to write the Christmas Carol, to be grateful for what he has.
Oh.
And that sort of kicks him off again.
Yeah, and also ghost stories were big in the Victorian age, right?
So the song, "It's the Most Wonderful Time," right? Mm-hmm. There's a line in there where it says it's time for scary ghost stories.
I never got that. I'm like, who's telling ghost stories at Christmas time?
Apparently, this was a very common thing, not just for Christmas, but for the things that predate Christmas. Yule and other kinds of things. For some reason, it was very common for people to believe that during that time of the year, the connection to, spirits and ghosts and all that kind of stuff was more common.
Okay.
And it was very common for people to tell ghost stories around that time of the year, which nowadays we don't really do that except for A Christmas Carol.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of weird.
Right. Yeah. So it captured, and Christmas was still not the full-blown holiday we know it as today, right? Yeah. It's sort of hit and miss. It's a little bit more as cities became more concentrated due to the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
You had these festivals and that kind of thing, but it was still not.
Wasn't a huge big deal. I mean, Cratchit only got a day off. Right?
Yeah, and had to be in extra early the next morning.
That's right.
Yeah. So, all right, so. Yeah, all right. Let's kick it off here. So everybody knows the story. We don't need to explain exactly what happens.
It's a very, very well-known story.
But there are a few things that that are not repeated in all of the plays and films and TV shows that you've seen.
And they vary. I mean, I've seen a bunch of different versions, and they vary in their faithfulness to the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's Grumpy Scrooge.
Yeah.
His faithful worker, Bob Cratchit.
Yeah.
It's the end of the workday,
Yeah.
and he's like, I gotta go. I got Christmas Day and everything tomorrow.
Right.
Great, you're gonna want the day off, I suppose. Right. So he's all, you get the old bah humbug.
Yeah. And his nephew comes by, and the guy's asking for some charity for.
That's the charity people.
Yeah.
He doesn't get anything.
Yeah. So I was kind
He's
of
like, I already pay taxes for.
All right.
Poorhouses.
That was one thing that caught my eye, was when he was talking to the guys about the charity, and he says, "Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" And then he says, "Is the treadmill still in effect?" or something like that. And I was like, "What the heck is that?" So I looked it up, and the treadmill was this thing where poor people could literally walk on a treadmill to generate power, like for a mill or something like that.
Right, instead of a river or something.
Yeah, instead of a river or cows or something, be suburban. So you'd have humans powering the treadmill to grind grain or something. It's like, hey, if you're down on your luck, there's your thing. Go do the treadmill.
Nice. That's rough.
That's
rough. Interesting, though. I did not know that.
Yeah. So he goes through all that. And then I was also curious, is it possible to map, if you think of like all the wicked things he says and does in the early part of the story, is it possible to map those things onto things that he learns directly, one-to-one, onto the things that he learns from the various Christmas spirits?
Well, yeah, I mean, he does get some of that language thrown back in his face.
Thrown back in his face,
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what made me wonder, because there are some times where it was clearly thrown back in his face, and he thought, "Oh yeah, I guess I did say that." Right? But it would be interesting to try to go through all of them and say, here's where he's a jerk here, and here's where he gets it.
Which would be the genius structure, way to structure a novel.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So kids, if you're writing a paper on the book, look at that. Think about ways to look at it. So what do you think about Marley's face appearing? One of the things that you said, what's in the book that we didn't see in many of the movies, is like everybody knows Marley's face showing up in the door knocker.
Right.
But in the book, Marley's face also shows up in the tiles around the fireplace.
Is that so?
Yeah, which it's not really really clear in the book, but it does come out in the book that Scrooge is sitting there in his miserable place, and he's getting his fire going, and the tiles that have all these gospel scenes and other kinds of stuff carved into them all become Marley's face.
Well, what do you know? And so Marley, he
was his old partner.
Yeah.
His old partner, and I think the business is still called
Scrooge and Marley. He never changed it because that would have cost some money.
But
was he as grumpy as and as penny pinching?
See, I don't think so.
No, why not?
I think that Marley's death really had a toll on him, and that's when he really becomes he really perfects the Scroogeness.
But is Marley coming back saying you need to change your ways, or is he saying I was just like you?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm miserable, and you need to change your ways. Like, so was Marley as Scroogey as Scrooge in life?
Marley definitely had regrets, and he talks about it, you know, as the ghost. But I don't know if he was as Scroogey as Scrooge was.
I always got the impression that he was, but it's an interesting question to ask. And another interesting question to me is, why does Scrooge get the second chance? Like, I reread the book looking specifically for what is it about Scrooge that he gets the second chance? Marley never got the second chance. There's all kinds of other sinners who don't get the special treatment by three magical ghosts that appear. Right. Why does Scrooge get the second chance?
Does he seem
I think
redeemable? Not really.
Well, I think that's the nature of Christmas. Okay, it's the nature of redemption. It's the nature of forgiveness.
That we're all capable.
Compassion. That we're all capable.
Even the worst of us.
Yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right. At the same time, it makes me like, not everybody gets visited by three spirits at night to try to get them to change their ways.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
So-
maybe it is that he is the worst of the worst, and even with proper reflection and proper Christian spirit, even the worst guy in town can be shown the
and that's why that's actually an interesting thought, because there are some passages in the Bible that imply that St. Paul, for example, was shown mercy precisely because he was such a horrible person.
Well,
So like here you have Scrooge, like because he was the worst possible character, that's why he was shown mercy.
All right, so Marley says, got 3 ghosts coming, and Scrooge says, how about if I just get them all at once? Get this over with. I like that line.
Yes, that was
already.
pretty funny.
So he gets the first of the ghosts, and for me, this is the first one where I'm going, this doesn't really jive exactly with all of the versions.
Right. It's hard to picture
That we
the
see on
first
TV.
spirit.
Yeah.
Yes.
The second and the third spirit are easier to picture. The
Yes.
first one is difficult because the description of the first spirit is confusing.
But I think the first spirit's the most important one, or I could say the first spirit was the one that touched me the most.
Oh, okay.
So it was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. So the whole thing
it's old but no wrinkles.
It's old but not. It's got weird limbs. It's see-through but not see-through. The voice sounds like it's coming from a distance, but it's right there.
Yeah.
And I think your movie and TV directors are like going, we'll just make it a kid.
Exactly. Yes. So the movie, the version that I watched, which is the one that I remember from being a kid, was Scrooge the Musical with Albert Finney, 1970 version.
Yeah, good.
And in that version, the Ghost of Christmas Past is this prim and proper woman.
Oh, okay. In white?
No, she's wearing a red dress, but she's just like this prim and proper, 50s-ish
But not
woman.
sort of a wispy, ghosty
No, not
thing.
a wispy, ghosty thing at all.
One of the things about the Ghost of Christmas Past and that description of combining the characteristics of young and innocence and old is that in each and every one of us, I would say we hope that in each and every one of us, there still is that child and that childlike innocence that Christmas brings the best out of, or maybe not even the best, but brings out the joy of life.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of something he's getting at.
Yeah, this ghost isn't menacing. And takes him to see himself in the boarding school that Dickens may have experienced himself.
Yeah.
Now so I watched the George C. Scott 1984 version, which was very good and very faithful. And in this, it reveals that he's in this boarding school because his dad doesn't like him. His dad resents him because his mother died in childbirth.
Oh, wow.
And I did not see that in the book.
No, there is in the book his sister, Fan,
Fan.
saying, Father is so much nicer than
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, so he was a jerk to you before. But
we don't know
he wants you to
exactly
come
why.
home.
So I didn't miss something. I could even look back through the book. I'm like, this died in childbirth thing doesn't, which I was kind of a nice touch, really. But you're saying it's definitely not Dickens.
It's not in the book.
All right.
But I mean, it is
not
true.
biographical.
It is true that his father was a jerk and then softened and then brought him back home. According to
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So one thing that you said, what are some things in the book that didn't show up in the movies? One thing that never shows up is that he had a cold. Like throughout, one thing that it's mentioned in the book is that Scrooge had a cold on that particular night.
Okay.
That's why he was having some porridge or whatever he was having for dinner that night. And I don't know what relevance it has, but it's just something. But
it's something that you're going, that wasn't really in the...
Yeah. And then another interesting detail that I was wondering about was, why is he Ebenezer? It's an odd name. Ebenezer is actually a biblical name. It means stone of help. And there's a place in the Bible that refers to "Here I raise my Ebenezer" is a hymn. It's a Christian hymn, and the idea is it's almost like a turning point, or so the name Ebenezer itself might symbolically represent that here's a place where there's going to be some change. I thought that was
Well, I mean, there is scholarly debate, how much of this is tied to the Bible and sort of a Christian story, or is it just a Christmas story?
Yeah. Well, there is the place on page 59 that I thought was very interesting. Well, page 59 in my edition.
Right.
Mine doesn't even have page numbers.
I guess.
The edition is this.
You don't even have page
0.
numbers? Come on. What a ridiculous thing. So on this one section where Scrooge is saying, I wonder you, of all beings in the many worlds about us, should desire to cramp these people's opportunities of innocent enjoyment. And he's talking to the spirit of Christmas present. He says, you would deprive them of their means of dining every seventh day, and blah, blah, blah. You seek to close these places on the seventh day. So the spirit of Christmas present is basically saying, it's not me who's trying to create all these strict Sabbath rules. The strict Sabbath rules are somebody else. And he goes on to say, there are some upon this earth of yours who lay claim to know us, and who do their deeds of passion, pride, ill will, hatred, envy, bigotry, and selfishness in our name, who are as strange on us as our kith and kin, blah, blah, blah. He's basically saying, don't blame me for what people are doing in the name of Christmas. Or Christianity, or however you want.
I mean, with who?
This is the spirit of Christmas
present.
Oh, and
talking to Scrooge, right?
Talking to Scrooge. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It was the question you just raised is how much of this is biblical and how much of it is something else. And here he's taking a very kind of an anti-church attitude.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, because and there was debates. How much is the church really representative of the Christian values at the time? There was a lot of criticism by the intellectual elite.
Sure, I mean there always is. Yep.
Right.
So what I found in this was the visit to the Cratchit home.
Right.
Is front and center in
beautiful
every production.
Yeah.
Right. Cratchit is being underpaid. Family is poor. But there's so much joy. There's so much happiness. There's poor little Tiny Tim. There's this sad, the sad goose and the sad pudding.
Yeah.
The way that everybody makes a fuss about it as being the best ever.
Yeah.
And it's not even enough to feed everybody. But everybody's attitude is, gosh, this is
great.
You may have never made a better and more pudding than has ever been made, and it's just nothing to it.
Yeah, there's this one line in there that I really liked about nobody would have criticized it because that would have been like heresy.
Really.
Like, no, what our family is about is thankfulness.
Yes.
And you don't criticize.
And so Scrooge is watching this, and then Bob even toasts Scrooge, and there's a little pushback.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Come on. This guy, and he's
Scrooge,
like, look,
come on.
I know.
It's Christmas Day.
But it's Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
And so he's watching this, so he's like saying, he's like, what do you jerks have to be thankful for? And you know what? Right. Not very much, but we're thankful.
But we're thankful anyway because that's the way we are.
So now this is very familiar.
That's the Cratchit way.
But what isn't as familiar is the visit to Fred's. It's usually like that middle section is usually just the Cratchit family, and now you're done with Christmas Present.
In the TV show.
In the TV, right? In every production that I've seen,
there's
the Fred is
when
kind
he goes
of
out
new to
into
me.
the wasteland sort of thing.
Oh well, that's another.
No, that's number three.
Another one.
Okay. So you're right that most of the movie versions don't show the ghost of Christmas Present taking him to Fred's house.
Yeah, it's just Cratchit, and that's
Fred is his nephew.
Yes, exactly. Right. But they also, as you mentioned, Longinus, they also don't show him going out to the miners,
Right.
going out
Right.
to
Well, that's-
going out to the guys at the lighthouse and other kinds of. So,
Right.
so that's an
That's right.
element that gets dropped in a lot of the.
Which
movie
and
versions.
both the miners and the lighthouse are just representatives of people being grateful for having
We have nothing.
have nothing but are still grateful, right?
Yes, but the Fred also ends with it's the second time that they toast Scrooge, who was invited to the house.
Right.
Who they toast Scrooge, who doesn't deserve it. There's a little bit of grumbling, and so again he sees people that he has not treated well, who are not doing well in his mind because he's rich and they're poor. And they actually
have charity for him anyway.
for him.
Yes.
Yeah, and isn't that Christian and isn't that Christmas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or it should be.
Yeah, yes. So since this show is beer and conversation, I have to just make 3 mentions of references to alcohol in the story.
Good.
One is the fiddler at Fezziwig's party had a big pot of porter that he was drinking.
Very good.
Okay. The second one is they mention negus, Negus.
No, I don't know that.
Yeah, it was a drink of wine, sugar, water, lemon juice, and spices, which
Try
apparently
it.
is very similar to something called smoking bishop, which
That's the one that really got me.
Yeah, so Scrooge said that he and Cratchit, after Scrooge has his conversion and he's a nice guy, he and Cratchit are going to have a batch of smoking bishop, which sounds very similar to negus. It's a punch made of red wine, port, oranges, sugar, spices, and served hot.
Well, thank you for looking that up.
Yeah,
I went
yeah.
right past me. It was right at the very end of the chapter, and I'm like,
What the heck
what's
is
up? What's with
smoking
the
bishop?
smoking
I did
bishop?
look it up because I thought, okay, what the heck is that? But the idea of these various kinds of punches and drinks.
well, I have
We should try to bring those back.
I know.
Smoky Bishop's a great name.
I know.
I have a family like post-Christmas family gathering,
Yeah.
and we have punches and stuff.
You're doing
There you
the
go.
Smoking Bishop.
You're in.
or
You're in.
the
Let's make
negus.
it.
I'm not sure which
Let's
one
make,
was.
Let's make it. Yeah. All right. So how about this one? I love this comment about Mrs. Fezziwig. She was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the term. If that's not high praise, tell me higher and I'll use it. I just love that. I thought it was like, he's so on, she's such a wonderful woman. If I'm not praising her enough, tell me how.
And who is Fezziwig to?
He was
Scrooge.
his employer. So he
Oh,
was
this
first
is Christmas
apprentice-
past.
Yes, he was first apprentice to Fezziwig when
Right, and had nothing but good things to say about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently Scrooge was a decent guy when he was young, but
Right,
he got
so there's that other
engaged to Fezziwig's daughter.
Right, Isabel. It was called Belle here, but in the musical like my
That's
what
right.
am
Yeah,
yes, her name was that. My first stage appearance was community college musical version of this, and I was Scrooge as a young man. When he goes
there you
back and sees him with Isabel,
Uh-huh.
and but he's just too busy, really
Yeah.
to pay attention to her. And then,
Right.
so they were engaged, right? And then later on, he sees her happy with the family that she didn't
Right.
have with
Right.
Scrooge because he was too busy making money.
I loved that scene when they're showing the family that she has with her other beau.
Yes.
And there's
Kids are rambunctious.
The kids are just terrors.
Yes.
And everybody's like, okay, whatever.
And everybody's
Christmas
happy.
It's all it's all joyful and
the kind
everything's fine.
of stuff that Scrooge just didn't have time for.
Yes, exactly.
And-
And it was rambunctious, and the kids having fun, and everybody just laughing and thinking, "Isn't this wonderful?"
Right. So
That was
so
very
we get
lovely.
to ghost number 3. Most depictions I've seen are pretty accurate. He's
Yeah.
silent, like
Yeah.
a hood and a bony.
Now, why doesn't he-
He's like the Grim Reaper,
and
right?
doesn't- yes.
Was Dickens' characteristics of the Ghost of Christmas Future sort of what we created the Grim Reaper to look like?
Or was the
Or
image
was it there beforehand?
right? Was the image of the Grim Reaper already
I
in
don't know.
existence?
Yeah.
He used it for this.
That's a
thing?
good question.
That is a
I would
good
Now
like
I'm
to
curious
find out.
why he never speaks. Why does the other two spirits
they
speak?
speak.
Oh, because the future is not set in stone yet. And if he speaks, you set it in stone. That's why he never can talk. He's like, these are the possibilities. These are what could be out there.
That's pretty good, Longinus. I like that.
That's very good. And he sees Tiny Tim has passed away in this future this future vision.
Right. That's very interesting because by putting it into words,
right,
he's bringing it down into reality. Where you're just seeing visions of what might be. That's brilliant. I like that.
That's very good. So you see a man having his pockets picked, who's about to be buried, and a guy that nobody came to his funeral. Right.
Yeah.
So there's those sketchy characters,
and then there's the three people.
Then
going
there's the miners.
Well, wait a minute. No, Christmas Future, there are the three people who show up at the guy who sells, he's like a second-hand store, basically.
Oh, he's selling stolen goods, right?
Yeah. And he's got
stuff that they've lifted off of a dead body.
Yeah, and they've got the bed clothes, and it's like she took the clothes, his best clothes that he should have been buried in.
And put some other sort of cheap something on them, or what's he gonna know the difference of?
Good enough for
I don't.
Or whatever.
From my thoughts about Christmas Future is really just his headstone and nobody showing up at his funeral.
Yeah.
These other events are not as familiar for Ghosts of Christmas 3. That the miners, they're as poor as they can be. The lighthouse guys.
No, that's Christmas Present. Christmas Future is the people bringing the bed clothes,
the stolen goods to them. Right.
Stolen goods in, and the people. So another part of Christmas Future is seeing Tiny Tim dead.
Yes.
Yeah, and
or not seeing him dead, but seeing
the
his family, the reaction of his family
mourning him.
Yeah.
Right.
And now Scrooge has been pretty tough all along. Now he starts to break down a little bit. Like, he does live, doesn't he? Right? Yeah. Of course. And then, like you said, Longinus, he doesn't. The ghost doesn't respond.
Yeah.
Could be if certain people doesn't
respond. But there is this progressive softening of Scrooge, and that's an interesting part of the story. It's the idea you have to have character development. How does Scrooge change throughout? And he starts off a certain way, and you see him slowly softening until he has his big change.
Right.
And that's actually pretty cool.
It's almost like psychoanalysis, like therapy.
Yeah.
Right? Therapy with three ghosts.
Well, and actually, it's interesting you raise that, because one of the things, I don't know much about psychoanalysis or therapy.
Me either.
One of the things that I've been told is that an important aspect of it is facing the things that you fear. And Scrooge is basically forced to face his wickedness, the things that he said, and his own sins. He's forced to face these things and say, look, when you're talking about why don't they just die and decrease the surplus population? These are the people you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when Scrooge was Scroogey,
yeah,
did he just didn't care that he was hurting these people, or was he just he was not tuned into it, or he didn't realize that his actions were having such a negative impact on other people, or was it that he just didn't give a hoot?
But I think the Christian charity part of it is that Dickens doesn't show people suffering the consequences of Scrooginess. What they show is people, despite the Scrooginess, are still willing to extend charity to Scrooge.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But I think following up on what Longinus was saying is what we don't see is the consequence for other people of Scrooge's bad actions. Right. What we see is the consequence on Scrooge of his own bad actions.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, you're doing bad things to other people, but you're really damaging your own soul.
Yes. So any great book both captures the zeitgeist of the age,
Yeah.
and then has universal themes
Yeah.
that give it the legs to last forever. Otherwise, it's just a local story, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you get some of the. This is early capitalism, early industrialization, and on the bare bones face of capitalism is to maximize profit.
Yeah.
And that's
Scrooge.
Right. And so the book is not about changing the institutions or whatever.
No.
It's you as an individual,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Need to connect with the other individuals in your life.
Right.
Yes, mankind is my business.
It was exact.
Mankind, yes.
Right. It's the exact opposite of the Communist Manifesto, which you read last time, right? Which was all like, I don't care what happens to you. This is what's important.
Right.
And this is like, no, it's individual actions are the most important thing.
Yes.
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 Very, very, very much so.
Yes, and that's actually I really like that point because it really drives back that what makes the world a better place is individual people deciding to be better.
Yes, the social relationships that they have, not correcting the institutions. Now, of course, the treadmill. What is that? What's with the treadmill?
The treadmill. People acting like beasts,
like hamsters.
Hamsters on a wheel. Yeah.
Yes, the poorhouse, the debtor's prison, all of those things are bad things, but that's not what gets addressed here. Yeah. It is that he needs to be a better dude.
Yeah.
And so, yes. So what does he do first? Go ahead.
Well, the first thing is, one of the greatest scenes, I think, in literature, right, is where he wakes up and he realizes it's like, oh, my God, I might be able to have a chance to repent. And he opens up his windows.
Right, because it's like the ghost. It's almost like the ghosts come in 3 separate nights, but really this is all
one.
So I wanted to spend at least a minute on the time travel element of Christmas Carol because it's not a time travel story, but he's told that he'll get a visit at 1:00 in the morning 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
So it starts off on Christmas Eve. And then the first one is at 1 in the morning, which would have been Christmas Day. That would have been Ghost of Christmas Past. And then the Ghost of Christmas Present would have been the next day. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future would have been the next day. Yeah. But then when he wakes up, it's Christmas Day again.
So the first thing he does is everybody's looking very festive.
Yeah.
There's lots of description of comings and goings, and he says everybody seems to be going somewhere. Who's hosting any of these parties? Because everybody's in the street going somewhere, right? So it's a very open and festive. And so he looks out, he sees the festivities, and wonders what day is it?
Yeah, see, he honestly is confused about that because from his perspective, it's been 3 consecutive days. It should be 2 days after Christmas when he finally gets done with this.
So he's so thrilled that it actually is Christmas
Day, and that gives him the opportunity to say, no, now I'm going to celebrate Christmas the way it should be celebrated.
This up, and the first thing, what is he gets the big
turkey?
The big turkey. Now, I also recall goose. Yeah. But the book is definitely turkey, which is a higher grade at the time.
Yeah, that's why I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, turkey is native to North America, and turkey was not a big thing until around this time. They didn't have a lot of turkeys in England, of course.
Okay.
And so they had to bring them over from America.
They just had geese.
They had geese and other kinds of birds. But so the idea of having a big turkey, you had to be fairly wealthy to have a big turkey because it was an imported thing. It was in this time having a turkey in England was kind of a big deal. Nowadays we think of turkeys, you buy them 29 cents a pound on Thanksgiving. But at that time, a turkey was a big deal.
Right, and he got the big one, big as the kid, and had it delivered to the Cratchit house. And and he also goes to Fred's.
Yes.
Yeah? Right. So which I think both Fred scenes are generally left out. It's all Cratchit focused.
Yes.
I think. And,
Which if I was making if I was making a movie and you had to sort of condense, that would make sense.
You know what? That's a very good point, Longinus, because looking at all of the scenes that didn't seem to be missed, and I'm like, you know what? The director's cuts were the right cuts. We don't need the miners. We don't need the lighthouse.
Yeah.
We don't need two sort of identical scenes of Cratchit and Fred, and then Cratchit and Fred.
Yeah, Fred is a delightful element in that he shows Christian charity throughout the whole thing.
Right.
He's this kind guy who is a lovely picture throughout the whole thing, but there's no real development there.
Right.
So in terms of making a movie, yes, you could drop him out.
I could see how you could drop him out.
But I'm glad it's in the book.
Yeah,
I love it in the book. But yes, but reading it, I'm thinking, yeah. I can see why you get.
Well, if you have to drop something,
because every time that there's the person who's read the book of whatever the movie is, who has to tell everybody else, but the book was better. Well, that's because it's filled with details that the director can't put in every daggone detail.
So you only got 152 minutes.
So you have to cut stuff out, and I get why they cut the stuff out. Although reading it, it's delightful to have the extra points. Yes. So then, Tiny Tim is there, and he's still in. He's not dead.
Well, it's a happy ending. I like it. I like the book too because there's a happy ending to it. You know, I mean, we read a lot of books with a happy ending.
We really don't know that Tiny Tim does well.
Right.
We just have the hope now because Scrooge is going to apply his immense wealth to help.
Now, did in the movies? I love how he is so delighted with himself for sneaking in to get there before Cratchit gets there, thinking that Cratchit will be late.
Yes.
He is late, and he's loving it. He's like, oh, now I'm just going to give him the business for showing up late, and then I'm going to bring the hammer down with doubling his wages, or whatever.
And having a thing of smoking bishop.
Yes, that's where the smoking bishop.
That's right.
Yeah. Right.
That's right.
Yes. He says, oh, this is going to be so good. Watch this. I'm going to.
See, when I heard the smoking bishop, all I could think about was the rusty trombone. That was. I didn't. I'm glad you all clarified that for me.
It's a delightful story, and that's why it's been redone so many times.
That is it. You're right. It's like it's it's a little ghosty. The redemptive nature of it.
Yes, it's
everybody
positive.
loves.
It's like yes, take care of people who aren't as well off as you are. It's the yes, you can change. There's so many good things about it.
Yes, and that's what has been done by everybody here. Here I got Michael Caine, George C. Scott, Albert Finney, Patrick Stewart.
Oh, really?
Jim Carrey, Bill Murray. Guy Pearce does like a 35-year-old Scrooge, a young Scrooge. Kelsey Grammer, and then Cicely Dyson does a black woman Scrooge.
Is that right?
In America.
Okay.
Why not? That's great.
Yeah, why not? And then there's the Muppets.
So you go to Ranker or something like that where it always gives the list of the best stubs.
Yeah.
Muppets is right at the top. I don't know why that.
I've never seen that one.
I remember seeing that. That's Ed Asner, I think, is the. But I don't know. I just thought it was like the kids' version of it. But I don't know. According to some list-making people, it's right at the top of.
So it's a delightful story. If you haven't read it, read it. Watch the movies. It's great.
Yeah, never gets old. Never gets old. All right, gentlemen.
Cheers. All right.
God bless us, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.